Senator from Montana.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I get into my comments on Agent Orange, I just want to thank Senator Moran and Senator Blumenthal for leading the charge on making sure that our Olympic athletes are protected. You know, there are some that say that government has no business in this realm, and I couldn't disagree more with that. The fact is that this is a wrong that I think Senator Moran and Senator Blumenthal have tried to right, and I just want to thank them for their leadership. Madam President, I stand here today because the Trump administration continues to turn it back on our nation's veterans, many who are suffering from illnesses related to Agent Orange. Agent Orange is a very toxic defoliant that was used in Vietnam. Everybody that was there was exposed to it because it was used in such great volume. And by denying the folks who have suffered from that exposure eligibility for the benefits and the care they need, they're not doing right by our veterans. The fact of the matter is there is no logical reason behind it except for the fact that they don't want to pay for it. They don't think the exposure to these toxic chemicals in Vietnam are a cost of war. Well, they are. And today we're telling Acting Chief of Staff and Acting Office of Management Budget Director Mick Mulvaney and other White House officials to do their job and make sure these veterans are taken care of. It is time for this White House to do right by the 83,000, that's 83,000 veterans who are currently suffering and dying from significant health conditions associated with Agent Orange exposure. This administration, the Trump administration, needs to stop ignoring the overwhelming scientific evidence put forth by medical experts, by scientists, and by veterans. Internal documents obtained by a veteran through the Freedom of Information Act revealed that in 2017, President Trump's first VA secretary, Dr. David Shulkin, Dr. Shulkin tried to do right by these veterans. At that time, the VA proposed to expand the list of presumptive health conditions associated with this toxic herbicide to include bladder cancer and Parkinson-like symptoms and hypothyroidism, so that these veterans would become eligible for the benefits they've earned if they had these conditions. But Mick Mulvaney and the White House objected. They didn't want to spend the money. They said they wanted more studies that would have effectively run out the clock as more and more of these veterans suffered and died. Since then, the National Academies of Medicine found evidence that hypertension has even greater evidence of association with Agent Orange exposure than the conditions that Dr. Shulkin attempted to address. And yet, the White House still refuses to take care of these veterans. They refuse to expand the list to include these four conditions: Parkinsonism, bladder cancer, hypertension, and hypothyroidism. And more have suffered, and more have died. These are Vietnam veterans that are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. But this administration, the same folks are quick to beg for nearly $20 billion for an ineffective border wall that Mexico was supposed to pay for. And they're happy to put $1.5 trillion tax bill on the government credit card. But they refuse to recognize that this is a cost of war and that they need to do right by the Vietnam veterans who have already waited decades for the benefits and the care that they've desperately needed. So it's pretty simple. Do the right thing. If you claim to be an advocate for the veterans, no more excuses. End the wait for these veterans and their families. These veterans and their families have already sacrificed greatly, and they should not be forced to wait 1 minute longer. This issue needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with today. I yield the floor. Suggest the absence for quorum.